In this video, I want to share with you the concept of permissions in Android. The mobile device is related to person privacy. For example, its locations and maybe the phone call, the storage, okay, so and internet access. So meaning to say, when we are designing applications, so we the applications need the user permission. The user must allow the application to use some of the facilities and services. For example, if the application need internet, then the user must know that now this application is going to use internet. And if, let's suppose, the application is using external storage for writing some contents there, then the user should must allow permission. If a kid want to get permission from parents, then you see the parent, the kid is like asking for some permissions, and then the parents maybe allow the permission, so like permission granted, then maybe the kids become happy like this. Okay, so maybe some of the permissions are granted, and if again the kid need some permission, so they are requesting again. So in this way, the app that we design, the app also, if the app needs some services which is related to the user privacy, or it must need the user permission, then the application will formally request for permission. So there are actually two type of permission. One permission is a bit less sensitive. Some permissions are a bit less sensitive, and some are very sensitive. For example, internet, using internet nowadays, most of the apps are using internet, it is not that much sensitive. But the location is a user privacy actually. So you cannot use user location without the user permission. Similarly, you cannot write something to the mobile external storage without the user permissions. So these are sensitive permissions. So the permissions which are sensitive, then the app will explicitly request and the user will explicitly allow. And the less sensitive information, there is no need for explicit request, but the user at least should know that the app is using that services or that permission now. So to show all these concepts in Android, let me create a project. I created this project, um, get permissions. So now uh, all the permissions that you want to use, or the app need to use, you will have to explicitly define in the manifest file. So let's open the manifest file here. Before this application tag, we will have to define all the permissions. So use permissions, opening tag, and use permission, and I will give automatically a name. So what these are all the permissions, and mostly all are clear from their names. Okay, so in this example, I want to use to show you the example of less sensitive and more sensitive. So the less sensitive is, let's suppose, is internet. So internet permission, and then closing this tag, again opening tab, use permissions, and write name, and the next one is a sensitive permission, for example, write to external storage. So close this one, and next one, use permissions, is, let's suppose, the location of a user. So there are two ways that nowadays the apps are using location. One, when the app is running, only at that time will use the user location or the device location. Another way is, even if the application is minimized, still the app is using the location. So one is called foreground location and one is called background location. So the foreground location is course location, access course location, close this one, and the other one is use permissions and background location. So these are all the permissions that I want to request in this example. So now close this manifest file. Let's go to activity.xml. So here is just this hello world default text view. So I will delete this and I will add one button. Okay, so let's delete this and add a button. Rep content text is equal to request permission. Okay, and the ID I should give ID btn request permission. Okay, now let's do the constraints. So make it horizontal in parent and vertically in parent. Now in the click event of this button, when we click this button, then the application will ask for the permissions, and then let's see that if the user allow or don't allow. Okay, so let's open main activity.kt. Here we will first check that these permissions are allowed, already given or not. So for this purpose I need to define several functions. For example, first one, private fun stand for function. So let's first one has right to external storage permission. That this permission has or not has right to external storage permission. So this is a function, and in a Kotlin, this in this function I just want to use one built-in function which return as a boolean value, a number, that yes, this function is granted or not. So it is just one line text. So in Kotlin, if a function is just one line text, then no need to type these curly braces. Okay, and if the function is returning a boolean value or return a value, then we can use like this, then equal to. Okay, now the function that we want to check, that is this permission is allowed, is granted or not. So for that purpose, the function is activity combat dot check self permissions, and check these permissions for what? For this current activity. This activity is requesting, so this, and then the permission. So now which permission? That one is manifest. There are two manifest. One is manifest java.util.jar, the other one is Android. So we will use the Android one. That permissions, and now which permission you want to check that it is given or not. So let's suppose the first one, right external storage. So this storage permission is given or not. This is return, it will return a value. So let's check this, that is it equal to package manager dot permission granted, that is it equal to this. If it is equal to this, so it means it is granted. So it will return the number, and the numbers are actually these permission granted, like a true and false value. Another function we will define in the same way, like private fun. So we can do like this also, that actually we can type copy and paste the same function several times, or maybe just type has a foreground location permission, has foreground location permission. So again, this will be a function and it will return a value, and any function which return a value, we will make it right like equal to, and again activity combat dot check for self permissions. So for which, who is requesting for this activity. Okay, this means this activity. Okay, and then manifest dot permissions dot access course location. This is the foreground one. Okay, this equal to, again, package manager dot permission granted, is it equal to this. So it will return a boolean value again. So next one, private fun function again for the background one. So has background location permission, has background location permission. So this will be a function, and is it equal to this? If yes or not, so then activity combat dot check for self permissions. Okay, which one? This. Okay, and manifest dot permissions dot access background permission, and is it equal to package manager dot permission granted. So these three functions will check that this permission is given or not. Okay, so now the actual function is actually this one. If these are not given or not given, then we will put all these permissions in one array and then we'll request for that. Okay, so meaning to say the function which is used for requesting a permission, it needs all the permission to be stored in array. So for that purpose I am writing another function, private fun. Now I am formally requesting for this permission, and in this function I will call these functions to check. Okay, so this one is, let's suppose, a request for permission, a request permission, request permission. So this function inside this so now this function we will write in this format, because it doesn't return that type of value, it is not one line, so it will be a complete, it will have the body like this. Okay, now we will create one string, mutable string, in which we will list out all the permission that we need. Okay, for that purpose we'll create one permission to request, or request for permission, anyone, request for permission or permissions. This one equal to mutable list of strings. Okay, so this will be a string in which we will put all the permission that we are seeking for. Okay, so now let's check. Okay, let's check the permissions and then add in this array. So to check, if now I am calling these the above three functions one by one, so if it is not guaranteed, then I will put in this array. So if not guaranteed, not has the external storage permission, if it is not given, this exclamation mark means if it is not given. So then do what? Then a request for permission, this string list dot add what? If it is not given, then we should add this manifest dot permissions. So it is which permission? For the external storage dot access to external storage. So this one we add it to this if it is not given. Similarly, we will check in the same way the other two. If it is not given, has not foreground location permission. If it is not given, then again add this one to request for permissions, a string, this mutable list dot add, and manifest dot permissions dot access course location. And last one, we will check the last condition, that if not, exclamation mark, not has the background permission. If don't have, if it is not guaranteed yet, then add this one also to this mutable list, manifest dot permissions dot access background location. So now we prepared a string which contain all the permission that we If it is not guaranteed and we need it, so all are actually now here. So now here we will check again that if this request for permissions is not empty, okay, if it is not empty, it means it has some permissions which is not guaranteed yet. So then we will request for this. So then activity combat dot request permissions, and now this one, what permissions, so who is asking for this permission? This activity, okay. And now the permission array, the second next argument is the permission array. So this permission array, you see the type is string, so but our one is mutable list. So we will change this request for permissions dot to typed array, okay. Last argument is request code. So here we will give one code, any code you can give, any number you can give to identify later on that this permission to note the to get the or maybe to, yeah, okay, this code, this code is used for to later on find out that this particular permission status that is guaranteed or not guaranteed, okay. So for this moment I will just give 0, okay. Now you see we designed all these things in this request permission function. I call all the about three functions to check that these functions are, these permissions are given or not. If not given, then I put in the mutable list, and here I request, if it is not empty, then I request for the permissions, and I converted the mutable list to array. Now at the after this, if we can actually check, because now maybe we request for the permissions, but it is not necessary that the user will allow. Maybe sometime the user don't allow, and maybe sometime the user allow but later on revoke the permission again. So we can check, okay, and we can find out which permissions are given guaranteed. So for that purpose there is one functions we can check it. It is I think on request permission result. Yeah, you see this one, on request permission result. So this is the parent function, parent class constructor, and this function return as three argument. The first argument is an array, it integer array, and it actually store all the numbers about each permissions, okay, that all the permissions which are guaranteed, okay. This array is a string array. This array contain the names of the permissions, okay. And this array, the request, this is just a number, a request code, and actually this is this code, okay. So if let's suppose, you see, if there are several requests, here we have only one request, so it has a number 0. So if there are several requests, then maybe we can differentiate here by the request code, and we can give to one request a code 0, maybe to another one, and so on like this. So here we can differentiate by this code. So we can check now here again that if this grant request is not empty, meaning to say it contains some values, it means some permissions are granted, okay. If it is not empty, and we should check that it is the same request, okay, the same request. So then for that purpose we can check the request code equal to 0, okay. So in such a case we can go through this array one by one and check, okay, with it which permission is given. So for the for I in grant result dot indices, using this for loop, it will go through the first element, the second element, the third element until the array size -1. So in this case it will go like this. So now we can check that if this grant result array I dot, if this is equal to package manager dot permission granted. So if it is like this, it means this function, this particular permission is given, is granted. So then we can actually display a message to console that this function is granted. Okay, so for example, so now we can write like log dot d, and the tag should be request permissions, and the next one we can create a message that which are given. So here we will use the variable that this permission name, you see this one. So permissions, the names are stored here. So permission I is guaranteed. Okay, now in this way it will go through one by one, and any permission which is guaranteed, then it will this condition will be true, and then it will display to the console. So let's call this function request for permission function from here and the uncreate button, uncreate function, and this one we will put in the click listener of this button. Okay, so this button is btn request for permissions set on click listener, and here we will call the request for permission function that we defined here. Now let's run the program and see the result. So if I click this button now, you see it is asked that allow get permission. Get permission is this project name to access the device location. So allow all the time, it means when the app is in a running state, and when the app is minimized, meaning to say is a foreground location and background location, all the time. Or allow only while using the app. So this one is like both, and this one is only the foreground. So if let's suppose I accept allow all the time, so now is the second permission, that access to photos and media on your devices. It means that it is the permission to external storage. So let's suppose if I deny this one. Okay, now let's check the locate. Okay, the locate for debug messages, and let me copy this. So you see this one, that the access to the course location is granted, and the location for the background location is granted because I accepted the all the time. Okay, but the other one is not here because I didn't allow. So if I click again, okay, it will again ask. So this will ask again and again until we give all the permissions. Okay, for example, if I again deny, if I click again, it will ask like this. So if I allow this time, so you see this one is also granted. Okay, so if I click again, so now this time this condition become false. There is no yeah, this condition become false, that it is empty anymore. Okay, the array doesn't contain any permissions to be requested. So that's all.